Welcome to The Spacious Place with Andrea Best, brought to you by CKJ Live. The Spacious Place is where you get to be who you really are. Not what your experiences say, not what your role as a wife or a mom says, not even what your job title says or doesn't say. You get to be who you were fearfully and wonderfully created to be. Join me as we explore the woman inside, the one who longs to be set free. Let's talk with women who journeyed and found themselves surrounded by endless amounts of opportunity. And at this point, they're unstoppable. So if you're ready to be you, truly you, make room, grab a pillow, and welcome to The Spacious Place with Andrea Best. Welcome to The Spacious Place with Andrea Best. Thank you, ladies, so much for joining me again this week. We are in another episode of the Life After Loss series. And today is extremely special because the actual title of the series was inspired by my guest today. Have you guys ever had those moments where you kind of just stumble upon somebody at the right time, like the right moment, like it was God. It was God because it's just perfect. That's what happened with me and my special guest for today. So we were friends on Instagram. I was following her maybe for a couple of weeks. I had seen that she was pregnant. I saw that she was married. I love that she did like daily prayers and things. So I was drawn to her, but there was like one post maybe 2 weeks after I had started following her that really caught my attention. And she was talking about a previous miscarriage that she had had. And she was saying that she was starting a 5-day devotional and that she wanted ladies to join. And I kind of sat looking at the post, not really knowing. I don't know if it was fear. I don't know if it was like nervousness, I know this is something that I need to do, but I don't know if I should. It was that I just sat with. And then, I just made the decision God, okay, I know this is you. I'm going to decide to do it. And then I commented on the picture and, just thanked her for starting the support group and just being grateful for having found her post. And she said something along with some other things, but she said something that hit me. And we're actually going to talk a lot about it later. But she said that she had realized that healing comes in layers. And I was like, yes, that's exactly what I've been experiencing lately because y'all, the miscarriage had been on my mind for months prior to that, and I had the miscarriage back in November. And at this time, it was probably June-ish. And it just had been on my mind. And it wasn't like a real sadness, but it wasn't it was just weird feelings, but it was still on my mind. And I was like, that healing in layers, that's where I was. I was just at another layer of healing. And so I don't want to take up too much time with just me talking. I want to introduce her. She is an amazing woman. She has an organization that I'll let her talk about later as well called Loving the Academy. I want to introduce you guys to my special guest for today, Lady J.
I love you, sis. I'm really, really excited to be here. So
thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much for being on the show. First, before we kind of get into your story, I want to thank you for just being so bold and just obedient. I feel like the guests that I have this season, y'all, are just so obedient to God. And I am just so inspired by that. I want to thank you for that first.
Sis, no, you're welcome. I know it sounds weird, but it always, when people thank me for being obedient, I be like, do I deserve a thank you? Because you be having your moments where you're really not obedient. And you know, you be like, I kind of went kicking and screaming. I don't know if God will be like, thank you for obedience, but thank you for finally giving in. But I'm great. At the end of the day, I am grateful that I did it, because it honestly not only blessed you ladies, but it honestly blessed me in many ways that, I'm sure for all of us, there's just even layers in the devotional and the time for us together that it's like we experienced it, we talked about it, but there's still things behind the scenes from it that you can't fully express, like it was so good. So,
yeah. Now, I want you to share just a little bit about your story as far as your miscarriage and what you went through during that time.
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay. So, crazy thing. I was actually preparing for my sister's conference at the time. So I was preparing for a conference, and it was a couple of days before I was facilitating like a prayer, like a week-long prayer. And my husband had went out of town. So this is just like the background to like, mentally and emotionally, like where I am. So, when you're doing things for God, you're like, I'm about to do this conference. You're just not really anticipating anything in this regard. And so, I'm preparing for prayer, and I just was doing a lot with my sister's ministry and helping her out. And so going into this week of prayer that I was facilitating, my husband had to go out of town for work. And so at the same time he went out of town, I was watching my sister's 2 kids. So it was my 2 kids and my sister's 2 kids here at the house with me. And then my sister-in-law was with us as well here at the house. So I, it started bleeding, and I didn't bleed the first time I got pregnant, but I had heard of spotting during pregnancy. So I again, didn't think anything of it. Like, I'm out here working for Jesus. Like, it's just a quick spot in, it's okay. And so I know it sounds really like outlandishly gross, but I had texted a picture to my sister because I told her I was bleeding. She's like, but what's the color? And I was like, I don't know how to describe this. So I sent her a picture, and she's like, okay, now listen, I don't want you to be alarmed. I don't want you to be nervous. I just think that you should go to the hospital and now just, to the ER. And so I'm like, okay, I guess at this time it was so late. It was like midnight, and I'm like, oh, I guess the kids are sleeping. Maybe it would be best to go now. Again, my husband wasn't here, but I was like, okay. And so I just remember actually being in my office. I'm staring at the chair that I was sitting in. And so as I got up and I walked out of my office room, the Spirit of the Lord just said to me, you're going to be okay. But it wasn't that, you're going to be okay or it's going to be okay that felt like reassuring. It was that you're going to be okay, sense of comfort.
Okay. Yeah.
And so at first, I was just kind of like, okay, really didn't think anything of it. Like, I'm going to be okay. Okay. Got it. So I went to the hospital, and then at this time I had never heard of a vaginal ultrasound. I've always got a topical one. So at this point she was doing a vaginal ultrasound, and it was, it was like, okay, I guess maybe this is procedure, whatever. And she had left the room, came back, kind of was looking around again. And then she, that moment that we all experience, when it's like, okay, it's time to break this news, and the person's acting kind of weird, but I'm kind of not paying attention to it, but I can, I feel like her disposition. And she was just like, okay, I just want you to look on the screen. And she was like, you see like the red outside of the placenta, like that's blood flow. And she was like, if you look inside, the baby does not have any blood flow. And she was like, and the baby does not have a heartbeat. Wow. And at that moment, it was kind of like, I think I legitimately looked around the room like, who's she talking to? Like, no way she's talking to me. It just didn't really sink in that moment. And I think that I was so calm that she was like, are you okay? You have any questions? And I was like, no, I'm okay. Because again, in my mind, like, she is not talking to me. And it took a minute, to really sink in the fact that, like, girl, like, there's something in your vagina. Like, she's definitely talking to you, Right. And know that that's really like intense, but at that moment, that's all I could think was like, girl, she is inside of you right now.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was just like, okay, wait, dang, like she's talking to me right now.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, my first response or reaction was like, I need my husband, you know, but he was not there, let alone on top of this, I call his cell phone. He's not answering. It's 2:00 at this point, you know, when you be in the emergency room, you be waiting all night.
Right.
It's finally 2:00 in the morning is when, you know, I finally get back here and they do everything. So it's 2 a.m. He's away at training, but I'm like, but I need him. Like, you know, I need him. And so, girl, I did my womanly investigator stuff. Found out the hotel he was at because of his GPS location. Called the hotel. Tried to figure out his room secretly because they didn't want to tell me.
Right.
So, like, I finally, you know, got a hold of him, and I could just hear in his voice how, you know, just devastatedly vulnerable he was because he wasn't here, you know, with me. And so at that point, you know, I got back to the house and I just kind of prayed because I didn't really know, you know, I think honestly, I'm sure for many of us, even leaving that hospital room, knowing the news that I got as a believer, it's still that sense of, Jesus, you work miracles. Like, I'm gonna come back in here and they gonna be like, God must have touched you, honey. You know, like in my mind, Lord, you're not gonna let this happen to me.
Yes.
You aren't gonna do this to me. Like, you know, it's this sense of, okay, let me I don't know the word for it. Cause it's not like, I don't think it was trust. It's almost the sense of, this is harsh to say. And I know sometimes it's difficult because the way me and God communicate is a little, you know, like very blunt. I think it's personality wise, but you know, one day after that, for the next 3 days, I journaled. For the next 3 days, I was so intentional to just write down my emotions, my thoughts, my feelings, everything. And then as I wrote, it was like I was having a conversation with God. And I just remember one of the days I had wrote on there and said, like, where did my faith fail? And God said to me, isn't it interesting that even when life is completely outside of your control, arrogance and pride would tell you that you're still in control.
Ooh. And
I was like, I'm sorry, Dad. You had said what? you had said what?
What you had said.
Right. Let's just say one more time. But I realized that what God was trying not to be, you know, God wasn't trying to be harsh. He was trying to get me to realize that life, everything will fail outside of him. You know, and that even though this wasn't a sense of like trust, it wasn't like, oh, I trust God so much that this won't happen.
Right.
It was the sense of arrogance that, God, do you know who I am? You better not let this happen to me.
Yes. Yes.
And
that's so good.
And of course, you're not looking at it from that perspective. But if God says, you know, that he doesn't fail us, that he does not leave us, then even when it doesn't feel like that's the reality, I have to trust him at his word. And so it really led me to realize that, again, just like people fail me, just like money sometimes fails us. It seems like we have so much money until we need more, right? We have so much money until the bill says it's $10 more than what the bank account says. Right. It's not adding up, you know? And so this was God showing me that literally our bodies fail us.
Yeah.
Like, you know, this is not me letting you down. This is the reality that the world that we live in, everything fails us to include our body. That's literally why we get sick, because something in our body breaks down. And so I just had never experienced that truth to understand that, like, dang, our body, you know, this is just a moment in time where my body failed me, you know, because we live in this imperfect world. And so the next, you know, 3 days when my husband wasn't here, I couldn't really stop. You know, I had my kids, my sister's kids, and I was kind of just on go mode. And I just remember the second he walked in the door, he walked right up to me, gave me a hug, and it's like my body went limp. I felt like I could finally feel, I could finally breathe, I could finally break down, you know, because I didn't have to continue being, you know, the strong one in the house. Right.
Mom and, you know,
So I just finally, you know, broke down. And then my prayer was, Lord, if it took Jesus 3 days to raise with all power, don't let me sit here. Like, just don't
Mm-hmm.
sit here emotionally.
Yeah.
But it was crazy because I felt like I said to you, that was my first layer of
Mm-hmm.
healing. But it's hard. It sucked, but it was like I was healing individually, but it was like this immediate attack on my family. Like it was the thoughts of Satan, telling me you'll never give birth again. You shouldn't even try. Like, it was all of those things.
That's real.
And because of those things, I remember telling Satan, this is not the end. I'm not dying here.
Mm-hmm.
This death isn't going to kill me.
Yeah.
And I just remember saying that I was so angry, but it was like when Satan began to speak, I finally turned my anger towards him instead of turning my anger towards God. Thank God for that.
Right.
So I just remember saying, I'm about to give birth to everything, that I've been procrastinating on. And not only will I give birth, but I'm going to start giving birth to other women. And it's not just going to be, physically. I'm going to start birthing more women in kingdom that will be able to crush your voice. And it was like the fact that I said that to him, it just seemed like my marriage was in turmoil. My sister called me the next day and was like, my nephew swallowed like 29 cents or something like that. And he's 5, that's life threatening.
Right.
And then 2 days after that, my brother called me and said that he's in the Army, and he called me and said that his command team was trying to like kick him out of the military, and it was only giving him 2 weeks to like figure life out and get out. And it was just like, okay.
Yeah.
My life was in a whirlwind.
Right. Yep. I so connect with that. When you were talking about those initial moments, and I think about the guilt and the shame that I experienced. And I remember in the devotional, you were talking about how we needed to combat that with comfort and peace. How did you find yourself doing that? Like, when those moments came, what was your response?
So I actually ended up writing I didn't end up writing the my devotional for the miscarriage until this year, 2020. But last year I wrote a devotional called The Enemy is Inner Me. So like the enemy, enemy is the inner me. And I think that I've always been really good at identifying Satan versus God. And so for me, not to say like, oh, it was so easy, because some of those thoughts are not just Satan. Some of those thoughts are my thoughts, But I think it's important that we as women, we as Christians in general, we have to be in tune with what is God's voice, what is my voice, and what is the voice of Satan. And the reality is, if it is not life producing, if it is not the word, it's not God.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was just offensive, like it's offensive. Like, wait a minute, like, like, you're not gonna kick me and I'm down.
Yes. That reminds me of my friend. Like, I'll tell her, like, I'm having these thoughts, I'm feeling like this. And she'll be like, oh, I can't stand him. Like, he's such an idiot. Like,
100%.
Right. And she goes in with prayer, because she's like, no, he has no room here. Like, you ain't doing that to my friend, So I completely get that.
Yes. It's like, it's so offensive.
Right.
Like, how dare you tell me I got no future? Right. So yeah, I think that sometimes when we get into places of emotional baggage, we completely shut off the spiritual no, if you will. I don't know if that's really a word or a phrase, but you know what I'm saying? It's just like, we as women are such emotional beings that sometimes we know it's not God, but we still just let those thoughts run rampant. And so I think for me, just to hear those things and to identify like how hurtful they were, I was like, okay, no, I'm not about to listen to this, Satan. So if you want to go, then let's go. But if you talking, I'm talking too.
Right.
You know? So I think it's a matter of realizing, you know, who we are as children of God, who we are as women of God, and knowing our value, knowing our worth. And even in moments where it's just us and we're looking around and there's nobody else in the room, but it's these thoughts in our minds, knowing that even your thoughts, you know, if they're not lining up with God's word, they're not qualified to be said. You know, they're not qualified to be entertained or to run rampant. Because I think that's really where, you know, the disconnect is. We think that we don't stop ourselves or our thoughts from running rampant. Right. And we think that every thought is from God. And the reality is it's not. God is not going to tell you. I've had thoughts of suicide. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I know good and well that is not a thought of God. And so at the idea or the presentation of that type of a thought is so important for us to actually use our words, not just to like shake our head, you know, silently like, I didn't like that. No, say it out of your mouth. Satan, I rebuke you. Right. I would never. Yeah. My life is valuable, you know? And I think that, or just say Jesus. The word, the mention of his name, demons must flee. And sometimes when you feel too weak to encourage yourself, listen, just throw a Jesus. Oh, Jesus, please. I've been in stores and been like, oh, Jesus. Yes. Please. Absolutely. Please. I don't say much, but listen, I throw a Jesus out there. Right. I don't got much right now. Right. But I'd be like, lady, I'd be like, Jay, shh, just shh. And if I'm really honest, I'd be like, shut up. Right. Gosh, like, oh, listen.
Yeah, that, and it's just so real. The conversation that you're having now is speaking so much to where I am. Because if you guys haven't listened to the previous episode, you'll learn that Ray and I are expecting again. And this whole journey is a journey in itself. You guys, Lady J is also pregnant. How far along are you now? Well, this will be coming out in a couple weeks, so you'll be further along. But as we speak today, how far along are you?
As we speak today, okay, this is so bad. I keep telling myself, I'm gonna look it up. I'm in my third trimester. I know.
Okay.
I want to say I'm like 30 weeks. Is that third trimester? I'm so bad. Yes. All I know is I'm due in November, so I got 2 months left. In my head, that's the only thing I know. People are like, how many weeks? Listen, I got 2 months.
I know when I'm due. Okay.
I got 2 months. Listen, we're counting down by the months. Okay. Right.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure I'm like around 30 weeks at this point.
Okay.
But yeah, I have 2 months left. So
awesome. But just the place that I'm in now, when you were talking about combating those thoughts, speaking it out loud, I have never been in this space in my head in my entire life. And so this conversation is really, it's so life-giving to me because first finding out that I'm pregnant, you're flooded with all of this excitement. You know, you are, just so thankful, so grateful. And then there comes a moment when you're like, oh man, what is this going to be like, going through this journey. And so I have found myself more and more having to just speak out loud. I am only going to believe what God has said. You know what I mean? I can only entertain that because anything else will lead me down a rabbit trail of nonsense. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it's just so amazing the timing of the devotional, because there were so many things that I unpacked during that 5 days that completely prepared me for this pregnancy, y'all. Like, you have no idea. I mean, there's so many things that I talked about in the last episode, but there's one thing that I remember just being so thankful for the support group. And that was just understanding. And it's kind of what Lady J, what you said earlier, just understanding that it was not my fault, that my body also in this world that we live in will fail me. And that I love what you said, that, it's not about trusting God. It's not about having so much faith that, oh, God ain't gonna never let that happen to me. And it's just that ain't it. You know what I mean? And so that point in the support group, it really just shifted my perspective. I actually ended up getting pregnant the month after the devotional. And that was one thing that I was just praying about, for God to prepare me, prepare my mind, prepare my body to become pregnant again. And that just the devotional, the support group, we met over Zoom, you guys, for a week straight and just talked about the devotional that Lady J sent out. Now, during the time that you experienced your loss, what was your community like?
I didn't have one.
Yeah.
I didn't have one. I don't think anyone's ever really asked me that question either. So I'm kind of like, oh, you know, the question you've never heard before. It's not that you don't know the answer, but you're like, how do I even articulate this? Right. What do I don't really know where to go from here. Well, I'm a little stumped. I didn't have a support group. I didn't have a community of women that I did talk to, or that I did confide in. Yeah, I didn't. My sister is my sister is my best friend, and I talk to her about everything. I share everything, you know, with her. My best friend at the time, that sounds so bad, but it's really the honest to God truth. My best friend at the time was doing a competition. And so I had flew out there because I had already bought a ticket to support her for her competition. And so I had flew out there to be with her for her competition. And so it kind of took my mind off of things, you know, just being there and just supporting her and just, you know, just kind of putting everything into that motion. But while I was away in Washington, I had been wanting to release my single Used by You for the longest time, and I hadn't. But I think while I was there, I set a date. I said on September 1st, I am releasing my first single. And then I recorded a video while I was out there talking about my miscarriage, because I said, I am not going to individually tell the world and tell everyone. I don't want to have to, you know, continuously relive this. And so I was like, I am just going to put this out there vividly and exactly how I feel and what happened. And I will just, you know, put that on my social media and let my friends and family, you know, hear it in that way. Obviously my close friends and family members, you know, I talked to them about it, but I didn't want to have to keep telling that story, you know? But at the same, so I kind of coped with it in that way, you know, just, instead of sitting in the loss, I really sought God for, okay, how do I live? What is life out after the loss? What is life after this? And so,
that's exactly where I am during this pregnancy, understanding that the miscarriage was not all a loss. I think there were so many moments while I was pregnant during that time that I heard God so specifically, that I saw God, that I heard some answered prayers. And one thing that I've been understanding is that the entire pregnancy, no matter how long or short it was not all a loss. You know, it ended with the loss of the baby, but there were so many moments, man, even in the loss, that, you know, I experienced God. And so it was just that life, the title is just so perfect. Life after loss is just because it's like you were saying, you have given birth to so many things that honestly for me have been, kind of pushed. They have pushed me from the loss. So, this podcast, my very first episode in season 1 was talking about my miscarriage. And that was to everyone, you know what I mean? And other than my close friends and family, like you said, that was just my opportunity to tell every individual person. So I connect with that. But it's interesting that you say that you didn't have the community, but you built such an amazing community. I still talk to and, just keep up with the women from the group. And it's just so amazing that
Can I just say this really quick?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm cutting you off.
No.
My son loves your book. Like, he loves it. And I was so surprised because he doesn't really likes books, but he doesn't latch on to things.
Yeah.
But he literally, like, especially like the first week he got it, I read it to him one time. The very next day, he sprints to the bed. He was like, all right, mom, I'm going to bed. And I was like, okay. He goes, oh, no, wait. I was like, what? And he was like, little boy, big joy. And I was like, what? And he was like, I need to read Little Boy, Big Joy. And so he will flip through every page. You know, he's too young. He can't read.
Right.
He describes every picture in your book. And it's so beautiful because one day in particular, you know, in the book where I think the little kid, he may have fell off the bike and his friend kind of is like holding out his hand. Well, we went to the park, I think maybe the next day, and this little girl fell and he goes, here, take my hand. Let me help you up. And that's literally how he reads like, that page in the book. And I was like, oh my gosh, come on, little boy.
That just fills my heart. Oh my gosh.
He loves it. And I love it because he sees himself as that little boy. And he definitely has humongous personality.
That is so awesome. Thank you for telling me that. If you guys don't know, I do have 2 children's books, Little Girl, Big Heart and Little Boy, Big Joy. They are available on Amazon. Shameless plug. But thank you. Right. Thank you so much for telling me that. That warms my heart. Seriously. It seriously does.
I love it. It's his favorite book. I'm like, okay, so read your book.
Now, okay. There was one day of the devotional that you talked about Psalm 139, specifically verses 13 through 16. It talked about just God knowing us before we're even formed. And I'm going to read it just so I can say it word for word. But I'm going to read Psalm 139, 13 through 16. It says, for you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. Woo!
Woo!
I think when I read that in the devotional, I was like, wow. So intimate. So, I mean, I don't even know how to explain. I'm trying to find the word to explain even your eyes saw my unformed body. Just
girl, that part.
Yeah.
Took me out. And let me just say this, because I don't know if I shared this with you guys or not. I was writing a blog for a Christian app. This girl asked me hey, do you mind just writing a blog for me? I was like, yeah, sure. Mm-hmm. I was only writing a blog about loss. What I thought was only supposed to be a blog about loss turned into God sitting me down one afternoon for 5 hours writing out this 5-day devotion.
Wow.
When I got to that day, and I read that scripture and I wrote what God spoke to me, I literally balled up into, it was another layer that I didn't even realize to come off. I literally balled up into a circle on my bedroom floor and cried. I'm talking about, that good cry where you're just
yes,
sound. I mean, I bawled. I just bawled in my room. And it was just, I don't know. It was so, like you said, it's weird because it's hard to explain, but
it is.
It speaks to so many levels in me. Mm-hmm. It speaks to so many layers of loss and healing and love and appreciation. And just, there's so many emotions in that scripture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, that was one of the days that, I was truly in awe of the way that God spoke. Because with the way that I experienced my miscarriage, I had something which I also explained called a blighted ovum, which is basically the baby doesn't form. And so when I got an ultrasound, they didn't see a baby. And just to know that God still saw that precious baby, still formed that precious baby, no matter how long it was in my womb, like that speaks to me because it's like, man, our Father is just so intentional.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So intentional. And so that day I was like, I think so. And I was doing the devotional like early in the morning, like 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm pretty sure I woke everybody up in my house just with like,
wow. I understand. Yes. Listen.
Yeah. Yeah, it was so good. Just so it was just filled with so much healing. Like, and I cannot get enough of that, the phrase healing in layers, because even today, you know, I still find myself like peeling back another layer and just being blessed by what's on the other side of it, you know?
Ooh, that's so good. Yeah. And many people need to hear that. I'm glad you said that. You, instead of looking at it like, oh gosh, I'm still healing. Thank God I'm still healing. You know, it is genuinely all about perspective. Yeah. And I think I realized that too. You know, some people might look at it like, I'm tired. Can't my healing be done? But when you step out of healing, you step into like strength. And who doesn't want more strength? Who doesn't want more courage? Yes. It's all about how you approach this healing process that defines who you will become and who you are on the other side. And so as we take off a layer of healing, we are embracing another layer of strength. As I take off another layer of healing, I'm embracing another layer of courage. Yes. As I take off a layer of healing, I'm embracing another level of freedom, of peace of mind. And I know for me, let me just say this. I know for me, when I didn't know how to be excited when I got pregnant again, sis. I didn't know how to be excited again because I was in my mind preparing for loss. Yeah. And it's not that I was intentionally preparing for loss, right, but I was defensively preparing for loss. It was that defense mechanism of dressing it up to be churchy again. You know, the idea of, you know what, God, let your will be done. Either way, I'll be okay. Yes. No, why am I going into this saying, God, I'm going to be okay if you take this one? Again, arrogance. Stop trying to act like you trust me and just trust me. Say, thank you, God, for the recuperation. Thank you, God, for restoration. Thank you, God, for bringing, because I didn't let myself be excited. I didn't know how, but it's not because I didn't want to. Of course I want to be excited. Right. Of course I want to be happy. It was a defense mechanism, but in my defense, I was not trusting. In my defense, it was a lack of faith. In my defense, it was unbelief.
Wow. Come on, Lady J. Come on. Come on. Wow. That's just so powerful. It's so powerful because it's just being real with yourself. And like you said, just removing the, oh yeah, I trust God and whatever he's going to do. I know that God loves me. Yeah. And I'm going to believe the best. Yeah. And that was in, I think I have the Joyce Meyer's Bible, and she does a lot of commentary in it. And it says something that I read a couple weeks ago about believing the best outcome. Yeah. And that's what I have to keep thinking. Like, I see myself holding my precious baby. You know what I mean? Like, I'm gonna, like you said, I want to allow myself to be excited and to be joyful and to join my kids because they excited. If ain't nobody excited, they are.
Okay. Yes.
And so that was just so good. I'm so glad that you took that moment to say that because that blessed me and I know it's gonna bless somebody else. Are there any pieces of wisdom that, other than what you just gave us, because that was on point, just any pieces, any nuggets that you just would like to share just about life after loss?
Yes. I think that even in the devotion, I kind of ended with this because I think it's, the most important. It's okay to live life after loss. And it seems so, simplistic, but from a woman who has just lost something that was so precious to her, it's not so simple. And so I want to encourage women to know that you don't have to punish yourself. You don't have to punish yourself because this was not something that you did. This was not something that God did either, because I don't want you to be stuck in the blame game. I don't want you to be stuck in the victim mentality because the reality is I made a post, a couple months ago and I said, listen, God created us to be victorious, but you're not allowed to sit in the victim seat. This happened to you, yes, but this is not who you are. You are not just stuck in death. This is something that happened to you, but you can get through this because the only option you have in life is victory. Yes. That is God's promise to you. And so I pray that even after loss, we give ourselves permission to live. Even after loss, give yourself permission to live. And when God says that he sent his one and only son, right? Jesus said that I come that we might have life and have it more abundantly. He doesn't say just wake up and live the bare minimum. He doesn't say just wake up and allow yourself to have a little joy. No, he says live life in abundance. And so don't allow what you perceive to be I don't want you to get stuck as if it's a terminal loss, as if it's like the defining moment and that just ends everything. And I can't be happy because my baby's not here. And you can live life in abundance even after loss. Give yourself permission to do that. Yes.
Thank you so much for that. I'm blessed by this conversation. Truly. Ladies, Lady J has an organization called the Loving Me Academy. I want you to tell them about it because it's amazing, but I want you to give them more information about it.
Yes, I do. So I have a faith-based nonprofit organization, as my beautiful sister articulated. She did a good job, y'all. I mean, I know y'all, wherever you are, because you just do a little clap, because sis be on it. But yes, so I started it almost 5 years ago. Wow. And it actually started because right after I did have my son, I was breastfeeding. And, I have what people call a bonus daughter. So this was my first baby that I had personally pushed out. But I was in the military and I'm just going to put it like this because it's the best way I know how. At that moment, I wasn't really feeling fulfilled in the military. Mm-hmm. And then I kind of felt like during the day, my son wanted my top half. At night, my husband wanted my bottom half. And I was like, Lord, there got to be something more. There got to be something more to life. This can't be it. Okay?
Yes.
Lord? And so, God had spoke to me and he just said, you need to go on a journey to falling in love with you. Mm. And I was like, what? Easy. Got it. I'm a pretty dope chick. I think it's going to be great. And what I realized is falling in love with yourself, again, similar to healing, comes in layers. Mm-hmm. Because it's not just about all of the good. It's about embracing the woman in the mirror. And you don't get to pick apart what you see in the mirror. You get what you see.
Right.
And so I realized that the journey that he brought me on and falling back in love with who I was is because I was so disconnected from my pure identity, and I was getting lost, not in who I was, but in what I did. And oftentimes, this struggle for identity, we start looking at, if I ask you the question like, hey sis, who are you? You might be like, oh, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I have a podcast, but that's what you do. That's not who you are. And as women, we get that with it. We disconnect that. Yeah. And so after God kind of brought me on this journey, he challenged me to bring other women on this journey. And so before the academy, I actually started an online women's conference called the Falling in Love with Me Conference. And it's a virtual conference that we actually do every year in February. So this year will be our 5th year doing an online women's conference called the Falling in Love with Me. It's a week-long conference. And as the 5th year anniversary, we're actually also doing a retreat after the conference. Wow. So we just have a lot of exciting things coming up. But the mission, like I said, so birthed out of it's kind of backwards, I guess, because I started doing the conference. And then women started saying, like, I need more of you. Like, where are you at? Like, you gave me a week and then it was like, you're gone. Like, this is not okay. And so I realized, like, oh, my bad. Like, I need something else. And so birthed out of the Falling in Love with Me conference came the Love in Me Academy, which is now a nonprofit faith-based for women, where our mission is just to to teach and inspire women to continuously fall in love with themselves as they stay in love with Christ. Because as women, we continue to evolve. So we have to continue to connect. Yeah. But with God, he's constant. So you stay in love with Christ, but you continuously fall in love with yourselves. And I know I'm saying a lot, but actually September 1st, we launched our LMA Insider membership program. Nice. And so not just having like an Instagram or a Facebook community, but now we have a membership program where we pray together. We do virtual events together. We do mindset coaching together. We just, as women, do life together.
Yeah. So, that's so awesome. So awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show. This has been absolutely amazing. Like I said in my intro, was just drawn to you and your spirit just through your pictures. And so when I, in your prayer session, so getting this opportunity to talk to you, and after it being a couple months from our devotional time, because we was like on it every night, but just getting this opportunity to sit and just chat has been really life-giving to me. And I know it's going to be such a blessing to everyone who listens to this episode. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, sis. I love you anytime.
Ladies, thank you for joining me. Like, I don't know who else this is blessing, but this is blessing me, okay? I'm in a season in my life where this has come at the absolute perfect time. I cannot explain to you guys how excited I am to really be opening up this conversation about pregnancy loss and the way that God has carried us through our healing. And just hearing from him and seeing him in so many different ways as we peel back those layers of healing. Y'all, I'm so full from this conversation. I want to invite you to come back next week. It's going to be another amazing, amazing conversation. But until next time, this has been The Spacious Place with Andrea Best. You've been listening to The Spacious Place with Andrea Best, brought to you by CKJ Live. Psalm 118:5 says, "When hard pressed, I cried to the Lord. He brought me into a spacious place." Come back and join me as we make more room in our lives to be the women we were created to be. Let's live in the spacious place.